Good morning, Sudeep sir. Welcome, sir. Welcome.
Good morning, Manish. Yeah.
Sir, we are starting within 5 minutes.
Yeah, sure. No problem.
Hello, Ashwin.
हेलो सर, गुड आफ्टरनून सर।
अरे कैमरा चालू हो गया, पता नहीं कैसे मैं
अच्छा, यस।
नहीं वो कंप्यूटर बंद किया है ना, तो उसके बाद
हाँ,
हो गया होगा उसके सेटिंग में सीधा।
हाँ वो कुछ नेटवर्क इशू होगा सर।
हाँ, स्पीड कम होगी। सो रितिका है जॉइंट डिपार्टमेंट।
यस, एंड
Yes,
आवर
sir.
स्पीकर हैज आल्सो जॉइंड सर।
अच्छा, गुड, चलो।
प्रोफेसर सुदीप विश्वास सर फ्रॉम ट्रिपल आईटी।
अच्छा, हेलो, गुड आफ्टरनून प्रोफेसर।
So, good afternoon, all of you.
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Thank you for the invitation.
Ritika madam,
Am I audible?
just please start.
So I'll just share my screen.
Okay. So, welcome to the second session. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce to you all the second speaker for today, respected Professor Sudeep Biswas sir. Sir has received the PhD degree in Digital Communications from the University of Edinburgh, UK in 2017. From 2017 to 19, he worked as a research associate with the Institute of Digital Communications, UDIN, on optimization and signal processing for 5G and beyond communications. He also has industrial experience with Tata Consultancy Services, India, where he was an assistant systems engineer from 2010 to 2012. He currently works as an assistant professor with the Department of Electronics and Communications Engineering, Triple IT, Guwahati. He is also on the Technical Program Committee, TPC, of selected areas in communications, machine learning for communications in Triple IT, in IEEE Globecom 2021, and also for Globecom 2020. He is also leading a SERP-funded project, signal processing for coexistence between radar and future communication systems. He is also the coordinator of the MOU signed between IIIT Guwahati and Nation Yat-sen University, Taiwan. We welcome you, sir. With this, I invite sir to start with his session. Please, sir.
Thanks a lot, Ritika, for the gracious welcome. And yeah, so may I share my screen now?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes.
Okay, sure. Is my screen visible?
Not yet, sir. Now it's visible, sir.
It's visible, right?
Yeah.
So during the course of the talk, I'll switch off my video just to save some bandwidth. Is that fine?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll start now. So good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so basically This is the second talk, as I can see from the schedule. Initially, my talk was actually scheduled not before Thursday, I guess, but due to some last-minute changes, the schedule got changed, and I'm the second speaker of this FDP. So actually, ideally, I would have wanted everyone to go through a bit more of the basics of IoT in the talks, but since that is not possible now, so I had to include a few slides that covered some of the basics of IoT before I can delve into some of the details of design part. So anyway, not wasting any more time. So the talk that I'll be giving today for this FDP session is on full duplex radios for next generation IoT networks. Okay. So before moving on to the talk, so let me just give you a brief idea about the outline of the talk. So the parts that I would ideally like to cover today are some of the basics of IoT. I'm sure, you will be having more sessions where you'll be delving into more details about these basics. And one of the session, I think, is on Wednesday or Thursday by Professor Bhatia is going to go into details about these basics. But today, for the sake of this talk, we'll just speak about things that are relevant and important for the design and architecture that we're going to discuss today. One of the as the title suggests, for next generation IoT networks. So by next generation, what I mean is that 5G or the fifth generation of communication. So we are going to see what 5G has in store for IoT. Also, we are going to discuss what is 5G and how IoT is going to frame itself, or how the standardization bodies are framing IoT in the 5G era. After that, we are going to look into a radio access technology, in particular a duplexing technology, which is one of the hottest topics in research in the physical layer today, and that's full duplex radios. And we are going to take a case study of designing beamformers for full duplex radios for a IoT network. So if time permits, I'm going to discuss some other research directions on IoT that are going to shape the future of these IoT wireless networks. So what is IoT? By now, everyone has heard of the term Internet of Things. And it has been defined as the next logical stage of the internet and its extension into the physical world. Basically, it is the broad connection of devices that can interact with each other and share data to a larger network. And this data can be leveraged to extract a multitude of values. And all devices in this IoT framework, they must have some unique identifiers. They must use some embedded technologies to sense and gather this data about themselves, their environment, and then transfer this data to other devices or other hosts. Okay, and these data usually are correlated in nature and can be analyzed to make some informed and intelligent decisions. Now, there are a lot of technical challenges that are there to create an IoT network. However, from an industrial and business perspective, this IoT presents a grand opportunity to leverage previously unknown information and insight to transform and create industrial processes and new business models. Okay. So, considering this, several companies have defined Internet of Things in their own terms, and let's just look into a couple of them. For example, IBM, for example, the software giant company, it defines the Internet of Things as the concept of connecting any device, means physical object or physical device, to the internet and to other connected devices. Okay, and IBM also writes that IoT refers to the growing range of internet-connected devices that capture or generate an enormous amount of information every day. Similarly, SAP, which is another software giant, of Germany. So it defines the Internet of Things as the vast network of devices connected to the internet. And these devices may include smartphones, tablets, and almost anything with a sensor on it. It can be cars, machines in production plants, it can be jet engines, it can be oil drills, wearable devices, and many more. So these things, they basically collect and exchange data. So in this way, other companies have also defined the term IoT in different ways. ITU, for example, International Telecommunication of the Union, though they have defined IoT as a global infrastructure for the information society, enabling advanced services by interconnecting physical and virtual things based on existing and evolving interoperable information and communication technologies, or ICT. So in a nutshell, or in short, IoT basically refers to a system of interrelated, internet-connected objects that are able to collect and transfer data over a wireless network without human intervention. It is the networking of physical devices, vehicles, buildings, and other items embedded with electronic software, sensor, actuators, and radios for connectivity that enable these objects to collect and exchange data. Now, there are a lot of fundamental characteristics of IoT. So we're not going to go into the details of all of them. We're just going to discuss a few of them. For example, IoT, one of the characteristics is connectivity. So connectivity basically empowers this IoT by enabling IoT to be connected to the internet or other networks. Then there is data. So there is no IoT without data. In fact, nowadays, with the advent of so many devices, there's big data, right? And data is the first step towards action and intelligence. When I talk about intelligence, intelligence is the key to unlock IoT potentials, okay, because of its ability to extract insights from IoT data. And nowadays, the recent trend has been the combination of AI, machine learning, data analytics, and all those things. They can actually empower this IoT operation. Then there is some other characteristics like action. Actions, they are basically the consequence of intelligence. And if you refer to an automated action that a device has to take, or for example, there is an Alexa device in your home or a Google Home, and you ask it to switch on your lights or you close your curtains, these are all actions. And these are actions that are taken intelligently by those devices. You can either program them to take it at a certain time, or you can speak to them to take certain actions. So these are all some other fundamental characteristics. Then there is the ecosystem. So IoT, it has to be seen and analyzed through an ecosystem perspective, because when I talk about an ecosystem, for example, when you are trying to make a home, a smart home, then you have, for example, a Alexa device, Echo, the Amazon Echo as the center of your home, and connected to it are smart lights, smart bulbs, then vacuum cleaners, even coffee machines, your curtains, and all these are connected to that hub, which is the Alexa device or the Amazon Echo. And this entire thing is an ecosystem. And there are certain protocols that they use to run these ecosystems. There are certain platforms on which they run. And there are this huge amount of data that are being processed through this ecosystem. And there are certain goals and aims that all parties are interested from this ecosystem. If I talk about this Amazon ecosystem, this Alexa ecosystem, the goal is that you will give some commands. The device is going to perform some commands. You're going to put some timer for some certain things. The device is going to do that in certain times, based on location, based on time, based on the time of the day, all those things, right? Then there are other things such as heterogeneity. Like IoT is expected to be made of some heterogeneous devices. Means it's an Internet of Things, right? It can be composed of a multitude of devices, not just small sensors and Alexas and all those things. Your smartphone, tablets, everything is connected to the internet. Vehicles nowadays, electric vehicles, smart vehicles, they are all coming up. Recently, MG Motors has launched a new vehicle, and the tagline is AI inside, artificial intelligence inside. So these are all connected vehicles. So IoT is everything now. It's a heterogeneous network which nodes which can vary from a simple sensor to as big as a car or even a plane, a mobile phone, everything. Right. And finally, there are these two things: this scale, enormous scale, because nowadays we are going to look again into details about the trend that which the devices are increasing, but the number of connected devices will at least be an order of magnitude more than connections. Okay, this means that there will be a commensurate increase in the amount of data generated by these devices, which in turn must be transferred and analyzed to be leveraged. Okay. Last but not least, there's thing called security and privacy. So with so many devices connected to the internet, the security and privacy are an intrinsic part of IoT. Okay. So these issues are very critical as personal data. Your data will be available online. For example, if you are using some healthcare IoT system, whatever your healthcare data will be available online. So companies will try to scavenge those data. Those healthcare-related companies will try to scavenge those data. So it is important that your data is your data and no one else's data. So this demands data sovereignty, secure networks, secure endpoints, a scalable data security plan to keep all this information safe. So this entire IoT, it all exists in an ecosystem, and all the components and the environment that supports this IoT and its aim, this is the entire ecosystem. And this, all those characteristics, they form this IoT ecosystem. Okay, so this is a little bit of history about this IoT, though the term is generated around in the 70s. The actual idea of connected devices came around 70s. The term IoT, it was only generated in around 20 years ago by a person known as Kevin Ashton when he was working in P&G or Procter & Gamble. He termed it, he gave the term IoT. Basically, he wanted to make some RFIDs, and in order to make his presentation more lucrative, he gave the term Internet of Things at that time, though he must not have known how IoT would have developed and generated such a hype back now. So he basically gave the term to create a buzz around the term, because internet was at that time new. Everyone was looking into the internet, and so that's how the term came. Okay. Yeah, so with regards to the number of devices, connected devices, so these are a couple of figures that I took from a report from Cisco, and these are the predictions, the compound growth, the CAGR growth. If you see, there is the number of users, billions of internet users, is on the top of the slide, and the number of devices, or the billions of devices, is on the bottom of the slide. Now, while there is a 6% CAGR compound growth from 28 and 2023 in the number of internet users, the number of devices that increases is 10%. Right. So there is more number of devices than number of connections for users. So this is the if you look at 2023, there will be around 30 billion devices. And among these 30 billion devices, there will be around 15 billion just for mobile to mobile communication. The rest are for smartphones and tablets and PCs. But among this, the 30 billion devices, there will be 15 billion. The 50% of the devices will be machine to machine communication only. So this is the rate at which IoT devices are increasing. IoT devices are expanding. And so today we are going to talk about what the community is doing to take care of this flooding of connections and flooding of devices. And so in the later part of this discussion, we are going to talk about that. So with regards to the components of IoT implementation, there are various components that you have to take care of before you can implement an IoT network. and among many. So today we are going to focus primarily on the radio part and the standards part. Okay. So what do I mean by the radio part? Radio part, I mean the wireless connectivity that is that is required to connect all the IoT nodes to create this network. So now let's look at the second part of this talk, and which is the 5G for IoT. Now the future is 5G. You must have all heard about the term 5G already. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. So basically, to begin with, let's first see what 5G is. Okay. So 5G is basically the fifth generation of wireless systems, and it is the next major phase of mobile telecommunication standards. And the scope of this 5G will range from mobile broadband to next generation automobiles and connected devices. And two major trends are behind the race to 5G. And basically, these two things: one is the demand for wireless broadband that can carry video and other content-rich services, and the other one is the Internet of Things, where large number of smart devices communicate over the internet. Okay. So now let's just discuss what is 5G for IoT. Okay, let's decipher the term 5G for IoT. Now, with all the talk that you keep hearing about 5G, means the latest recent phones that come out, they talk about 5G, the latest iPhones, the latest Google phones, they all talk about 5G, right? So with all the talk about 5G these days, so it can be sometimes hard to decipher what is applicable for IoT applications, when it will be available, and what the transition will look like for platforms currently on 2G, 3G, or 4G technologies, right? But there is some good news, and the good news is that for companies, researchers who are in this IoT domain, true 5G is still on the horizon, and which makes it the perfect time to start planning for its arrival. Okay, and we all have to plan now, because 5G is slowly becoming a reality. In India, we are slightly late because of this COVID pandemic, and all the auctioning of the spectrum and all have been delayed a little bit. But we are hoping that by the end of this year, around December, some auctioning will happen, and we'll soon be seeing the rollout of 5G in India as well. So what started in 2012 in the standardization bodies has now evolved into a set of wireless technologies that are making the transition from standardization to commercialization. So now we will look at what that means for deployment in Internet of Things. So 5G, it's basically coming in waves. Okay. So this transition to 5G, it won't happen all at once. As with 3G and 4G before it, 5G is also arriving in phases. So following a path to commercialization that will reflect what's easiest to deploy. And that means that fixed wireless will come first, then followed by consumer and industrial applications. Okay. Now in this figure, we can see this 4 different waves that has been classified for the deployment of 5G, for the implementation of 5G. Wave 1 is basically a fixed wireless access. Means, as its name implies, what is fixed wireless access? It basically delivers cellular connectivity to a fixed location, such as a private home or business. So this fixed wireless access, or FWA, which is commonly known as, is often the first cellular service to support a new generation of operating standards. It's relatively quick to roll out, small local areas, which can still be useful for FWA, since there is no mobility requirements for this case. And actually, the widespread trials of 5G FWA began in 2018, and some of it has already been deployed in the US in 2019 and 2020. Then comes the wave 2. The wave 2 is the consumer cellular. Okay. So since smartphones have become such an important part of everyday life, they are an early focus of 5G consumerization. So network operators are moving ahead with deployments, and smartphone manufacturers have already introduced new models that are 5G ready. The new iPhones, the new Xiaomi phones, the new OnePlus phones, they're all 5G ready. The new Google Pixel phones, they're all 5G ready. Okay. So in 2019, a lot of deployments happened in the US. And by 2021, it is widely viewed as the year that 5G smartphones and the networks that support them will really begin to take off, not only in the world, but also in India. Then comes the wave 3, Internet of Things. So the IoT is an increasingly important market for cellular. Okay. So, but consumer demand is still a more immediate focus for commercialization. When I mean consumer demand, I mean the consumer cellular. So IoT is slightly behind in the race. So by the time that 5G will still be available in your phones and all, IoT will still be using either 4G LTE or in some cases even 3G. Okay. So new 5G device compatibilities supporting mobile and fixed low and high bandwidth IoT applications are expected to start coming online from 2022 onwards. Okay. So that makes 2021 an ideal time to start planning for and designing the 5G functionalities for IoT. Similarly, the wave 4 is the future 5G use cases. The first 3 waves of 5G are really evolutions of existing cellular use cases, delivering important enhancements to both low power wide area applications and high speed, high bandwidth mobile broadband applications. But the question that what's new with 5G in terms of high reliability and extreme low latency private networks on unlicensed spectrum and satellite communication, this aren't expected to come online until, let's say, late 2022. Okay. Only then will we be seeing features to support applications like autonomous driving as well as factory automation, also known as smart factories. So this is a common triangle that I usually present while showing the different verticals of 5G. Since cellular is now part of a very wide range of application and 5G reflects that, and so in addition to supporting the familiar use cases of smartphone streaming, 5G has to meet the requirements of IoT devices, which have their own range of requirements and use cases. So an IoT device, as I said before, it can be anything from a low power sensor transmitting only small amounts of data intermittently to a sophisticated edge device that relays real-time video to and from the cloud. So 5G will cover all of that. Okay. And 5G is also intended to last well into the future. When we look around 2030, so 5G will also be expected to last until then. So it anticipates the requirements for use cases that are around today, such as smart energy applications, as well as those that are still some time away, like driverless cars communicating with each other vehicles, highway infrastructure in real time, and all of this. Now, to address all these various requirements, 5G covers 3 categories of communication, each aimed at different set of use cases and operating conditions. So broadly speaking, these use cases are low power IoT applications, which are referred to as massive machine type communication, or MMTC, industrial and critical IoT applications, also referred to as ultra reliable low latency communication, and the consumer market, which I was just speaking about, which is referred to as enhanced mobile broadband. Okay, so these are the verticals of 5G. Now, with regards to this MMTC or massive machine type communication, this is really the evolution of low power wide area technologies for applications that require low cost, low current operation with high coverage in high density operating environments. And 5G will address this use case with evolved version of two low power wide area standards most widely used in IoT today. You must have heard LTE-M, which operates inside the LTE band, and the NB-IoT or the narrowband IoT, which operates at 200 kilohertz. Okay. So 5G will consider some evolved version of this very commonly used IoT, LTE-M and NB-IoT. Now, these technologies are designed for large-scale deployments of low-power devices such as sensors for use in smart cities, smart logistics, smart meters, and other applications. The ultra-reliable low-latency part, so this is designed primarily for the industrial IoT. This is designed primarily for industrial IoT. Okay. Or some commonly referred to as Industry 4.0. And with applications like factory automation, smart city 2.0, and in the future, autonomous vehicles, all those things. Now, ultra low latency and very high reliability are key concerns in this area. And quick handoffs and high mobility are also important, especially where vehicles and other mobile applications are concerned. 5G addresses this category mainly with the recently defined radio access technology, or known as NR, new radio. So this 5G NR technology, it supports very high bandwidth in the millimeter wave band, or referred to as FR2, the millimeter wave band, and is one of the biggest differences between 4G and 5G. Last but not least, the eMBB. This is what the next generation smartphones will use, and it's where the most consumer will experience 5G. It includes support for high bandwidth applications such as immersive video, augmented reality, 4K video streaming, all those things. High peak speed, high average speed are important here, as is the need to use spectrum efficiently while maintaining this high capacity. Okay. Now, this is another figure to show these verticals where this MMTC, the industrial IoT, or the URLLCC, and the eMBB lies, and what they are going to cover. So basically, 5G will enhance existing services and expand to new user cases in both the consumer and IoT markets. So these two are for the IoT markets. This is for the consumer market. So moving on, so what will 5G provide? Okay, some technical specifications. So you can see in this table, these are some of the technical specifications. Latency in the air should be less than 1 millisecond. Latency end-to-end device to core should be less than 10 millisecond. The connection density should be 1 million nodes per kilometer square. Area capacity should be 10 terabits per second per kilometer square. System spectral efficiency 10 bits per second per hertz per cell. And peak throughput per connection 10 gigabits per second. Energy efficiency greater than 90% improvement over existing technology, that is LTE. Reliability, that means 1 out of 100 million packets lost. Only 1 out of 100 million packets lost. So these are some of the technical specifications that are required for the things that we have discussed right now. Now, who decides those technical specifications? These technical specifications are designed by certain standardization bodies. And what are those? How are those cellular standards defined? basically the ITU, or the International Telecommunication Union, it's a United Nations agency. It is tasked with the coordinating telecommunication operations and services worldwide. Now, ITU, it basically provides guidelines by outlining the requirements for cellular operation. So these are the requirements, this A, B, C, D, E, F, these are the requirements that the ITU will specify. And the 3GPP is a standardization organization body, or commonly known as 3GPP, means the third generation partnership project, or commonly known as 3GPP. It follows this guidelines set by ITU and develops specifications like this. It will develop specifications like this. Okay. The ITU then evaluates the specifications, and having given their approval, issues declarations of compliances. And these standards, they usually come in terms of versions, version 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, like this. You will be able to see those standards on the 3GPP website. And based on these standards, the communication systems, they have to abide by those standards and build their 5G systems abiding by those standards. Now let's look into some of the standards with regards to IoT. So today's IoT network or devices, they're connected on a variety of wireless technologies that basically commonly fall into 4 classes of connectivity technologies. Some are short to mid-range wireless like Bluetooth. Some long-range wireless, including cellular and the low-power wide area networking, and also satellite. Okay. And another way is to divide them into short-range and wide-range connectivity segments. The former is basically typically enabled by unlicensed radio technologies like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Zigbee, and all. And later, the wide area connectivity segments consist of devices powered by cellular technologies such as GSM, LTE, and soon to be deployed 5G, as well as some unlicensed low power technologies such as Sigfox and LoRa. For the purpose of this presentation, we are going to keep the focus. We are going to concentrate only on wireless cellular technologies of the 3GPP standards. And in particular, we are going to discuss the evolution of 4G LTE and the future 5G massive IoT networks. Okay. Now the standards of, let's start from 13. Though around release 10 only this IoT was being standardized. Let's start from 13 nevertheless. So in release 13 of 3GPP standardization, basically this narrowband LTE IoT technologies, 2 complementary narrowband LTE technologies were introduced. The one LTE-M and the other one is NB-IoT, which we discussed a few slides back. Both are optimized for low complexity power, deeper coverage, and higher device density, while seamlessly coexisting with other LTE services such as regular broadband or the commercial broadband. Then release 14, it brought single cell multicast for easy over-the-air firmware upgrades and device positioning for asset localization, location tracking. And other things that also were introduced, like vehicle to vehicle and vehicle to internet, were introduced. Okay. And these developments in release 14, they provide LTE highly reliable low latency communication for critical IoT. Next, in release 15, basically it introduced that time division duplexing support for narrowband IoT, as well as a new wake-up receiver design to allow for even better energy efficiency. Finally, in release 16, enhancements were offered for both LTE IoT and the NR IoT, means such as NOMA enabled by resource spread multiple access, that which actually increases the device density and network efficiency. So NOMA is a future technology that has been introduced in release 16. Then release 16 also brought enhancements for 5G NR, such as interference handling, multi-radio connectivity, dual channel connectivity, URLC, then carrier aggregation enhancements and mobility enhancements. Okay. So basically, some of the enhancements or the improvements associated with 5G are extensions and evolutions of what's currently in use today. And here, let's look at what's included in the new, what's are included and are going to be included in the new versions of 5G NR IoT. So first of all, the LTE-M and NB-IoT, the LTE-M and NB-IoT for 5G. So 5G for MMTC is based on enhancements to LTE-M and NB-IoT and promises to increase coverage, device density, and battery life. By coverage, I want to emphasize that you can expect coverage ratings above 164 dB maximum coupling loss. So that means that transmissions will go farther and are more likely to reach their target when passing through walls or other blockages, even undergrounds. Okay. Then with regards to device density, so 5G promises increased capacity with support for as many as million devices or more per square kilometer. That means that the ability to support more devices, they come from several features, including flexibility in scheduling, improved frequency division, multiplexing, then higher order modulation like 64 QAM and beyond, and support for an earlier data transmission scheme. Then comes the battery life. So 5G will also deliver improvements in current consumption of power. So low power applications will need even less energy to run. So power saving features such as a new synchronization signal, a wake up signal, and a system change notification flag, then the lighten the power load and help extend battery life to this means this will help extend the battery life to more than 15 years in the field. So all of these 5G MMTC features, they will be available in future firmware versions. So today's already deployed LTE-M and NB-IoT hardware is future-proof to 5G. There are some other features also that you can see on the screen. Here that means so LTE 16 and the later parts of 15 also add some features such as increased mobility, better control plane latency, improved user plane latency, higher reliability, and lower network power. Okay. So release 15 also extends the reach, making it possible to service new applications, including interaction between devices. That means device-to-device communication. Then V2X, that means vehicle-to-everything communication, high precision positioning, and also improved operation in the unlicensed spectrum. Finally, we are also soon going to see a support for new duplexing scheme or full duplex transmission, which will help with both spectrum and power efficiency. We're going to look into it in a bit, what full duplex transmission means. So all these bombastic claims, all these futuristic claims, how will 5G accommodate them? How will 5G accommodate billions of IoT devices? Now there is a common network throughput formula that you can use or that you will find in literature. The formula reads like this. So basically, throughput is equal to cell density times the available spectrum times the spectrum efficiency. Okay. So how can you increase the throughput, let's say? So you can increase the throughput by either increasing the cell density or increasing the spectrum efficiency or increasing the available spectrum. So cell density is one way where IoT will be considered, definitely, because there will be more and more number of nodes. Another way is available spectrum. So if you move to FR2 or the millimeter wave range, which is larger than 24.25 gigahertz, then there is abundance of spectrum. The other alternative is to increase the spectrum efficiency of sub 6 gigahertz spectrum. And how you can increase the spectrum efficiency of sub 6 gigahertz spectrum. I'll just come in a bit why sub 6 gigahertz is important. This is also sometimes referred to as FR1, frequency range 1, and this is frequency range 2. Okay, why I'll just come back to why FR1 is important. But let's see how you can improve the spectrum efficiency of FR1. Basically, this FR1 is the sub 6 gigahertz frequency range, which is very crowded. We are already transmitting in these bands, and there is very less amount of bands that are available. That's why you see that even a small bandwidth goes for millions in auctions. So how you can increase the spectrum efficiency? One is by implementing massive MIMO. It means large number of antennas at the transmitter and receiver. Next is in-band full duplex radios. That means transmitting in full duplex mode. We are going to look into it later on in details. Other things are NOMA, non-orthogonal multiplexing access, then RSMA, and the dynamic spectrum sharing, or DSS. Now, massive MIMO is a way, but massive MIMO may not be feasible for IoT devices because many of these sensor networks or machine-to-machine communication, small devices, they are constrained by their physical space. And you must know that you need certain spacing among the antennas. Otherwise, mutual coupling will take place, and that coupling will is a hindrance to the received signal. So to implement massive number of antennas, you also need some space. You also need some massive spaces. And the other thing is that if you are on the sub 6 gigahertz, as you know that the distance between two antennas is inversely proportional to the frequency, So the higher the frequency, the distance between the two antennas can be smaller. But since so this massive MIMO is a feasible solution in FR2, where the frequency is very high, wavelength is quite small. So the separation between two antennas can be quite small since the wavelength is small. But in the sub 6 gigahertz, the frequency is not so small, so the wavelength is large, and so the separation between antenna has to be large, and so might not be feasible for implementing massive MIMO in this IoT devices. And so in this presentation, we are going to primarily look into in-band full duplex radios, which you're going to see is a very efficient way that can increase not only your capacity, but can also reduce the power consumption of these devices. Now, I was just mentioning that we are going to speak about FR1. So there has been a lot of craze about FR2, or the millimeter wave frequency, or sometimes also referred to as the true 5G. So though FR2 has abundant unused spectrum, transmission and millimeter wave frequencies are plagued by several attenuation due to various environmental factors. And this requires highly directional transmission, and this also requires a significant overhaul of existing wireless infrastructure. So that means that the sub 6 gigahertz spectrum, or FR1, which is the below 7.125 gigahertz, it is still the gold standard for transmission. Unfortunately, it is extremely crowded. So we have to think about a way with which we can use this spectrum in a more efficient way. And you can do that with full duplex. It is basically possible to double that spectrum through full duplex. Hence, any technology that offers a way to more efficiently use existing spectrum at a time when operators are trying to secure more spectrum for 5G is worth a closer inspection. So what is duplexing? So we have been using the term full duplex, the duplex term, for the past 2-3 slides. So what is duplexing? So duplexing basically refers to the mechanism of dividing a communication link for downlink and uplink. So until now, primarily two different duplexing schemes are used. One is the FDD and other one is the TDD, frequency division duplex and the time division duplex. So let's look into both of them now. So what is time division duplex? Time division duplex is, so let's say you have a central node here which is receiving some information from the uplink node. At the same time, it is transmitting something to the downlink node. So in time division duplexing, how this transmission has to happen is that in two different time slots, T1 and T2. So in T1, since they are using the same frequency, F, let's say, so in T1 time, the uplink communication has to happen, and in T2 time, the downlink communication has to happen. Okay. And so basically what you are doing is that you need two different time slots. That means wasted time resources. And you also need some time for switching interval. Okay. For the FDD case, what is happening is that now you are transmitting in the same time, but at two different frequencies, F1 and F2. So the uplink communication is happening in the frequency F1, and the downlink communication is happening in the frequency F2, but at the same time. So you might be thinking that now my communication is happening at the same time, so I'm doing fine. But no, here what you are doing is that before, if you look, you were using the entire frequency, but half of the time, now you're using the entire time, but only half of the frequency. Okay. So either way, you're wasting resources. So in TDD, you are wasting time resources. In FDD, you are wasting frequency resources. Now comes the game of full duplex. Full duplex enters the game and changes everything. And how it does is that it uses the same time and same frequency to not only do the uplink transmission, but also do the downlink transmission. So basically, nodes transmit and receive simultaneously on a single frequency band time slot. Okay. So it can give up to twice the throughput. No additional transmit power or bandwidth is required. No wasted time or frequency resources. However, there is nothing that comes for free. Otherwise, it would have been already implemented. The problem is when the transmission is happening in the same time and same frequency, this downlink communication is going to interfere with this uplink communication. And this interference is known as self-interference. Okay. That means the signal emitted from the transmitter antennas of a node is received at its own receive antennas. And this self-interference saturates the front end of the receiver. That means the low noise amplifiers, mixtures, the ADCs, etc. Okay. There's also something called the co-channel interference, which is coming from the uplink node to the downlink node, since this also happening, this transmission is also happening at the same time and same frequency. And now there has been a lot of research done on full duplex. There has been more than 1,500 papers published on this topic since 2010. It is currently one of the hottest topics in the communication field. However, still a lot of work is required before full duplex can be implemented in practical and varied applications. Hence, it is not exactly the present, but beyond. So it is considered as a 5G and beyond technology. So if you want to do some research on 5G full duplex, it's a very good time. Okay. Now let's look at an example scenario of a full duplex. So the example A is for a cellular system. Example B is for a point-to-point, device-to-device, or an IoT system. Okay. So for example, in the example A, the node, full duplex node is transmitting here, and at the same time it is wanting to receive, then it will create some self-interference here. Similarly, if it is a point-to-point communication, means two IoT nodes are trying to communicate, which has both transmitter and receiver. So what will happen is that this transmission is going to create this interference, and this transmission is going to create this interference at its receiver and this receiver. So basically, the main predicament of this full duplex technology is the self-interference, which is much greater than the signal of interference. Sorry, signal of interest. So this SI over S, which is greater than almost 80 dB. Okay. So we have to subtract this 80 dB around. We have to subtract this SI from the received signal. Otherwise, what will happen? Here is an example. For example, this H2X2 is the signal of interest, and H1X1 is the self interference, and I receive this Y1T. Now, after I quantize it, after passing it through my ADC at the receiver, so I get something like this, which is full of quantization noise. If I remove the interference part, I get something like this. Now, this cannot be decoded. I only have 1 to 2 bit resolution, which is not enough to get my original transmitted signal. Now, usually I need at least 6 bits. So if I have so much of quantization noise, I need around 6 bits. And you must know that this ADCs, the high resolution ADCs, they're very expensive in the market. So this SI should be mitigated in the analog domain as much as possible before it enters the ADC, to avoid this large quantization. So 2 questions must arise, and how much interference to cancel and how to cancel them. And to answer that, first you have to quantify the self interference or quantify the SI. So let's take an example. So here's an example. If you can see a small cell scenario and a Wi-Fi scenario. So PTX is the transmit power, PSI is the power of the received self interference, and PS is the power of the received signal of interest, and PN is the noise flow. This is the system model where this full duplex node is receiving from this transmitter, and at the same time this transmitter is also transmitting something, so it is creating some SI. Okay, so let's see how it looks for the small cell and the Wi-Fi scenario. So for small cell, the transmit power is around 20 dBm, and for Wi-Fi also the transmit power is around 20 dBm. And this power of the self interference which is received at this receiver is around 5 dBm for both the cases. The noise floor for the small cell scenario is minus 100 dBm, and the noise floor for the Wi-Fi scenario is around minus 90 dBm. Okay, so next is the signal that I receive. The signal that I receive for the small cell scenario, the strength is around minus 80 dBm, and for the Wi-Fi scenario also is minus 80 dBm. So that means minus 80 dBm signal is received here. So what can you observe from this figure now? This minus 80 dBm is below this 5 dBm. Okay, so you cannot decode this minus 80 dBm as long as this 5 dBm is overpowering. So what you have to do is that bring this PSI to this noise floor. That means you have to cancel, you have to bring this over here. That means you have to do 5 minus 100. That means 105 dB cancellation is required to bring the self interference down to the noise floor. So when you subtract this dBm, you get this dB because of the conversion from dBm to dB because of the logarithmic scale. The 30 that is there, the 30 gets cancelled, and the only dB part is remaining. So basically you need around 105 dB of cancellation for the small cell case. Similarly, for the Wi-Fi case, you need to bring this SI below the noise floor. So 5 minus 90 dB, which is 95 dB SI cancellation is required for the Wi-Fi scenario. Only then, if you do that, you will be able to decode the signal. If you didn't do that, then what would be my signal to interference plus noise ratio? Minus 80 minus 5 is equal to minus 85 dB without self interference cancellation for the small cell scenario, and minus 85 dB also for the Wi-Fi scenario. And receivers in full duplex system is useless in such SNRs, as SI will be dominant over the noise. Okay, so what we will do is that you will bring the SI, you will use some techniques to bring this SI to the noise floor. That means for the Wi-Fi case, the self interference has to be below this 100 dBm. That means PSIC now will be below minus 100 dBm. Cancellation of more than 100 dB. If you do this, your PSIC will be less than minus 100 dB. So once you do all those things for PSIC less than minus 100 dBm for the small cell and PSIC less than minus 100 dBm for the Wi-Fi case, your noise will be dominant over SI. And once noise is dominant over SI, you can decode the signal. That means that you will get your SINR. Will get your SINR. That means minus 80 minus 100, which is 20 dB SINR here. Similarly, here you will get minus 80 minus 90, which is 10 dB SINR here. So these are all respectable figures. Your full duplex system will work in this scenario. That means for small cell scenario, you need around 105 dB of SI cancellation. For Wi-Fi scenario, you need around 95 dB of SI cancellation. Okay. So I'll just skip past a few slides here, and this is basically the comparison of full duplex and half duplex systems. And what I want to say is that if you, again, the same example of a small cell scenario, if you do proper SI cancellation, this figure basically illustrates that for full duplex, you can achieve two times the capacity. As you can see here, for full duplex, you can achieve 2 times the capacity. In half duplex, it is half the capacity that the system can achieve. In full duplex, you can achieve the entire range of capacity if you do proper SI cancellation. If you want to know about this in more details, you can contact me later also after the talk. This is a simple figure that I usually like to show for the comparison of this full duplex and half duplex. And here you can see is that this is the half duplex. This is the half duplex case, and this is the full duplex case. And this range is the SI cancellation. So there is a crossing point here between full duplex and half duplex. So if you don't do proper SI cancellation, then half duplex is better than full duplex. But as you keep on increasing the SI cancellation, there will be a time there when you cross half duplex, and eventually you are going to reach the 2 times gain over half duplex systems. And by SI cancellation, I mean that you will have to use your entire array of techniques that you have. And this entire array of techniques includes antenna cancellation, analog cancellation, and digital cancellation. So antenna cancellation is basically two transmit signals interfere destructively at the receive antenna. Analog cancellation, you are cancelling the SI before it is digitized. And antenna cancellation, basically, and analog cancellation, both combined can give you around 70 dB of cancellation. But remember, we want around 105 dB. So the rest 30 to 35 dB you have to take care in the digital domain. Digital domain means by designing some precoders, beamformers, etc. We're going to look into it. Okay, so this is again just the same thing. Okay, let's quickly look into the 3 forms of cancellation. So this is an example of antenna cancellation. What is happening actually is that there are 2 transmit antennas which are placed in this way. So this is at a distance D. Sorry, there are 2 transmit antennas which are placed in such a way that a receiver antenna is placed in between them. Not exactly in between them, they are placed in such a way that the transmitter 1 is at a center of D and transmitter 2 2 is at a separation of E plus lambda over 2. Lambda is the wavelength of transmission. Now, at the receiver, what happens is that this receiving antenna receives the signal from transmit antenna 1 and also the transmit antenna 2. It basically what it does is that the position of the antenna, since it is placed half lambda wavelength apart, position of the antenna ensures that the signals destructively interfere with each other. Okay. So this is achieved by having one half-length wavelength distance offset between the two transmit antennas. Now, the resulting destructive interference, as we saw, gives you around 20 to 25 dB of self-interference. Now, one form of analog cancellation is the use of this balloon cancellation or a balanced unbalanced transformer. So basically, it just inverses the signal. So the transmitter over the air transmits this signal to this receiver, and also at the same time, this signal is being transmitted through this balloon or this balanced unbalanced transformer. So it is getting inversed, and so you have to take care of certain things like estimate the attenuation and delay of the self-interference channel, and then this negative signal that comes from this balloon. It is combined in the receiver to cancel the self-interference, and this will give you around 40 to 50 dB of self-interference cancellation. Now, both this antenna cancellation and analog cancellation will give you a combined cancellation of around 70 to 75 dB, which is less than 105 dB. Now, this 105 dB, as I mentioned, is taken care of in the rest of the 105 dB, that means around 30 to 40 dB is taken care of in the digital domain. And by digital domain, I mean design of optimal transceivers like the beamforming matrices, power allocation vectors in the baseband to combat this residual self-interference. There are some other things also that you must consider that actually affects this self-interference. These are hardware impairments like this limited dynamic range caused by the non-ideal amplifiers, oscillators, the ADCs, DACs, etc. in the design of these transceivers. Okay, these are some full duplex deployment scenarios, and basically you can deploy them in this point-to-point communication kind of framework. Here it is a two-node topology, which is applicable not only for device to device like LTE proximity services, Wi-Fi direct, Bluetooth, 5G, etc. Also for access point and base stations. And also you can deploy it in something like a three-node topology, which is applicable for cellular systems and also for some access point devices. Okay. Now, both of these technologies, they can be extended to multiple nodes. Now, there are some applications of full duplex that with regards to IoT that I would like to discuss before I go into the case study. So, for example, jamming while transmitting. So, what is happening here is that you can see there is a node 1 and node 2, and there is an eavesdropper. So that is trying to listen to what the full duplex node 1 is. That is trying to listen to what the full duplex node 2 is transmitting to node 1. So that eavesdropper is trying to listen to the conversation of N2. Now, or I can understand it in a different way. Let's say full duplex node N1 is transmitting to full duplex node N2, and this eavesdropper is trying to overhear this conversation. Now, what full duplex node N2 can do is that at the same time and frequency that it is receiving the information from N1, it is also sending some jamming signals. So at the same time and frequency that N2 is receiving data from N1, N2 is also sending some jamming signals, and that is going to completely secure this network. That is going to provide a hindrance to this eavesdropping of this eavesdropper node. So this is increasing the security through jamming in IoT networks. Okay. I'll not go through this cognitive radio case. I'll skip past a few slides and move to our case study. So this is primarily important from a research perspective. So this slide basically shows you a bidirectional full duplex IoT network. What you can see is that there are the rows or this rows, there are multiple nodes, and columns, there are 2 columns. Okay. And every one is a full duplex node. That means they're transmitting and receiving in the same time and same frequency. Okay. To make it a little simpler, let's go to the next slide. So here, let's say we consider this part. Let's say we consider this part only. Okay. The node I1 and node J1 communicating with node I2 and node J2. Both are full duplex. So on the column side, there are 2 indexes, let's say A equal to 1, 2, and on the row side, so there was the indices I equal to 1 to capital K, and I and J are just belong to that set. So here what you can see is that the green ones are the desired signal. The green ones are the desired signals. That means these are the desired signals. Self-interference signals are the red arrows. Internode interference signals are the pink arrows. And the intranode interference are this deep red arrows. Okay. Now, moving on to the system model. So in this figure, what you see is that signals that you see here, all the channel models and the signals that you see here might be too small, but just understand that these signals are all complex baseband signals, and each pair is equipped with multiple antennas and exchanges information simultaneously in a two-way communication. Okay. So for example, let's say the ith link, it has NI and MI transmit and receive antennas. Okay. Now the goal that we have is to design digital beamformers. Okay. And so let's assume that the 75 dB cancellation in the analog domain is already done, and we are tasked with designing some beamformers in the digital domain. What are the techniques that you can use? You can either use optimization driven designs or you can use data driven designs. For the purpose of this illustrations, we are going to just focus on the optimization driven design. So my aim is to design transceiver or beamforming matrices at the transmitter side of each IoT node. And the performance criteria to design this transmission, what I'm going to consider is some power minimization. Now, why I want to consider some power minimization? The answer is basically straightforward. So Green Communications, it has drawn increasing attention recently, not only because of the rapid increase in traffic with the popularity of smartphones, but also the limited energy supply that these IoT devices may have. And with the promotion of this green transmission in 5G networks, which emphasizes on incorporating energy awareness in communication systems, it is preferable to minimize the total transmit power consumed in the system. Or alternatively, you can also maximize the energy efficiency. In literature, in many literature related to 5G or other networks, you will primarily see sum rate maximization or mean square error minimization. But with respect to IoT networks, it is preferable that you use either some power minimization or maximizing the energy efficiency. Okay. Next, since the transmission and reception in full duplex system operate simultaneously in an active mode, the full duplex system requires more energy than a half duplex one. Hence, if the transceivers are not designed properly, the power consumption of this full duplex system can be much higher than that of half duplex systems. So this is the motivation to study the transceiver design for the sum power minimization. Okay. So the problem basically looks like this, and let me explain what the terms mean. So this is a minimization problem. Initially, in its initial stage, it's a non-convex problem basically, and what the numerator means is that the trace of V Hermitian, V are the precoders, and this two summation terms for all those IA nodes means that the sum power of the entire network. Okay, so V is the set of all the precoding matrices. When you take the trace of V Hermitian, you are actually getting the power of the network, power of the system. So you are summing up all the power and minimizing it. V, or the precoding matrix, is your optimization variable. Now, this is a constrained optimization problem, and you are constrained with a rate constraint. That means the IoT node means the power will be minimized, but the network has to satisfy a certain amount of rate so that my activity, whatever requirement is there, is smoothly functioning. If I don't give this constraint, it might be the case that the power is minimized at such a level that my normal functioning is not possible anymore. So I have to constrain this problem with a rate constraint. Now, what is I? I is basically the achievable rate of node IA, and this is the constraint of the node IA, individual node rate constraint. To maintain fairness, so sometimes what happens is that, for example, you have a the Google Home or an Alexa device which has to play some high resolution or high res audio for you. You are playing some music from it, so it needs higher data rate. Otherwise, for example, you have a sensor which needs very low bit rate, so it needs lower data rate. So if you don't put an individual node constraint for rate, then there will be an unfairness among the nodes. To maintain this fairness, what we have done is we have put an individual rate constraint. Okay. So how do you solve this optimization? How do you solve this optimization problem? So basically, you have to find a stationary point for the sum power minimization problem. And what we have done is that we have exploited the well-known relationship between WSR and WMMSE, or sometimes if you are not aware of it, let me just tell you that when MMSE receivers are used, or minimum mean square error receivers are used, there's a relation between MSE and SNR, and that relation is given as MSE equal to 1 over 1 plus SINR. Okay, so many a times you will see that rate-based optimization problems that use log2 of 1 plus log2 of 1 plus SINR, log2 of 1 plus SINR, they can be conveniently transformed into MSE-based optimization, where you see minus log2 of MSE. Okay. So the user-wise MSE, it can be used to approximate the achievable rate for the users when they jointly decode their streams. So minimizing the MSE of a user maximizes the tight lower bound on its rate. So this is a common framework that is used in many literature, and we have also used that relationship between this weighted sum rate maximization and weighted minimum mean square error relationship to obtain a relationship between the achievable rate and the minimum mean square error matrix of the IoT network, and that relationship is given by this, where E is the MMSE matrix of the IoT network. Now I will replace this with this here. Okay, so then after replacing it, the sum power minimization problem and the individual weighted MSE matrix can be given like this. where the relevant terms are mentioned. Okay. So what happens is that now this is the new problem P2. So it can be shown that the gradient of the problem P1 and the gradient of the problem P2, they are equal if the MSE weights, the mean square error weights, are chosen in this fashion. Okay. And if you see the KKT conditions, you will see that the KKT conditions of P1 and P2 can be satisfied simultaneously with the choice of this MSE weights. And if this is the case, then we can solve the problem P1 by solving P2. Now let's say this V bar, W bar, and R bar, where V bar is the optimal precoder, W bar is the optimal weight, and R bar is the MMSE receiver. They denote the optimal solution of this problem P2, this problem. Then this V optimal is also the optimal solution of the problem P1, the initial problem P1. Okay, so we only need to solve problem P2, which is convex in each of the optimization variables. This, okay, it is not convex over all the optimization variables V, W, and R, but it is convex in each of the optimization variables V, W, and R. So we can use the block coordinate descent method to solve P2. That means first for fixed V and R, you get the optimal W. Then you fix V and W. This W is this W, and you calculate optimal R. This R is the R bar is the MMSE matrix. Finally, what you do is that you fix this R and W, that you obtain the optimal R and W. Then with respect to that, you calculate the optimal V in an iterative manner. And in this way, you can solve this P2 using a Lagrangian dual method. In this way, if you compute, at the end, you will achieve convergence. You'll achieve convergence for V. Now, one thing to note is that this problem P2, since it is not jointly convex over the optimization variables, the proposed algorithm, that means this, it is not jointly convex over the optimization variables. So since it is not jointly convex over the optimization variables, so you cannot say for sure that the convergence will be the global optimal solution. And because of the non-convexity of the optimized problems we deal with here, so we have to choose some good initialization points. Okay, and if you choose a good initialization point, then the chances of you arriving at a good optimal solution is high. And there are several choices of initialization, like right singular matrices, random matrices, interference alignment initialization. You can find it in the literature. On the right side, you can see the convergence of this algorithm that we stated in this paper 20 in the reference. We use this random matrix initialization and the right singular matrix initialization, and you can see that the algorithm converges. Okay. Next, how you want to implement this algorithm. So basically, at each time slot, the receiver's feedback, their direct and cross links to the central node based on the global CSI obtained from all the receivers, and this central node then can perform the precoding optimization to compute the optimal V. After that, it can distribute the optimal transmit beamforming matrices to the transmitters of the IoT network for MIMO transmission. Now, this is a centralized algorithm, but in this paper, you can also find a distributed algorithm that we proposed. Okay. Now, this with regards to this centralized algorithm, this central, how can you decide on the central node? The central node can reside at any node in the network. In a dynamic environment, let's say the scheduler can be adaptively elected among the eligible nodes in the network, and the election of this central node, they can be done based on the capacity of a node, the status of a node, and the location of a node. Okay, so this the research of this scheduler election is an important issue, and if you're interested, you can delve into this further. So here are two performance figures, comparison between half duplex and full duplex. So you can see that at around, so this x-axis here, this x-axis here represents the residual self-interference in dB. So you can see that as the self-interference as the self-interference cancellation reduces, that means higher number actually means that cancellation is less, lower number means that cancellation is more. So when the cancellation increases, the power consumed by full duplex also increases. When the cancellation is very high, power consumed is very less. You can also see a crossing point between half duplex and full duplex. Half duplex is not affected by the cancellation as there is no self interference, so it is a straight line. That means that if you can achieve around cancellation in this region, if you can achieve cancellation around this region, you can achieve significant power savings. Okay. Similarly, in the figure on the right, you can see the sum power requirements with respect to the data rate. That if you remember that by data rate requirement, I mean as this Ri. So here, when you increase the data rate, your sum power requirement is also high. But if you manage to do some cancellation in the range of minus 80 dB, then you will require less power than the half duplex transmission that is currently in practice. Okay. So this is a case that I presented for full duplex transmission over half duplex transmission in future IoT networks. Now, in summary, let's just say that 5G wireless systems are on the horizon and IoT is taking the center stage as devices are expected to form a major portion of this 5G network paradigm. And these IoT technologies such as machine-to-machine communication complement with intelligent data analytics are expected to drastically change the landscape of various industries. Then support for new technologies for IoT such as full duplex transmission, the one that we just saw, it will arrive in future releases. We also discussed about some of the advantages of transmitting in the sub-6 gigahertz or FR1, which is the gold standard of transmission. So we can use full duplex to overcome the extreme crowded scenario of this sub-6 gigahertz. And why full duplex is such a hot topic? Because we have been able to cancel this self-interference to the extent that it is in fact a reality, and it has attracted immense popularity beyond academia. Academia, of course, there is a lot of interest by the sheer amount of papers that you see comes out, but companies around the world are also venturing into full duplex radios, such as Kumu Networks, Lexstrom, Gencom, and all those things. And the good news is that for researchers in IoT, true 5G is still on the horizon. And so now it is the perfect time to start planning for its arrival in terms of research, implementation, whatever. Okay. So here, I'm not going to go into too much details anymore, as I think time is very limited now. Still, this is just a brief summary of what is currently going on in the research domain. So here I have shortlisted these few 7 papers. Some of them deal with some advanced radio technologies on IoT. Some of them deals with this machine learning for IoT. Some of them deals with spectrum sharing for IoT. And these 7 papers might give you a brief intro about what is happening today and what is going to happen in the future. With that, these are some of the references that you can have a look at. With that, I would like to conclude my talk today, and I'll be taking some questions if there are now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, if you have any questions, you can, the participants may ask some questions if they have any.
Ashwin sir, are you there?
So, Sudeep, I have one question. A very exhaustive presentation. So
yes.
I'm just congratulated for that. My one question is related to this, the power calculation for interference and the received signal.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
had two scenarios. One is a Wi-Fi scenario, and
yes,
another is a small cell scenario, which is actually a mobile phone scenario.
yes, exactly.
And in both cases, the assumption is that you transmit 20 dBm of power, and receiver is expected worst case something like minus 80 dBm.
Yeah.
Right. So something like 100 dB
Yeah,
attenuation will happen into that.
yeah,
And the calculations were very, very interesting. I just a small anxiety that in both cases the transmitted power was assumed to be 20 dBm. Power transmitted by the cell phone as well as the Wi-Fi system.
yeah,
So, but as I understand, the typical phone that we have right now transmits something like 2 watts of power, which is something like 33 dBm.
yeah.
So, I mean, so this
So,
20 dBm is the lower side of that, or something. What I meant is the interference may be larger in that case.
yeah, exactly. What here means the typical cell phone, they it starts from around 1 watt to 2 watt.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, just for a coherence of the presentation, we consider 20 dBm for both the cases.
Okay, okay. Thank you. I mean, this was I mean, this is only in my mind. So it's,
Yeah.
I understand for the presentation,
Yeah.
things has to be simplified to the level
Yeah.
that, you don't have too many variables at all places.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So thank you very much. Thank you for clearing that part. And second question is this, this minus 80 dBm signal that we assume at the receiver, this may be the worst case scenario, because typically
Yes,
probably
yes.
when we receive
Exactly.
a strength stronger.
So we are moving ahead with the worst case scenario,
Yes.
considering that we have to design a radio that it means, see, self interference, this interference, the land of interference problem is anyway the worst case scenario. So
Yes.
so if you have to encounter this land of interference, so just why not take the worst case scenario? So
Okay.
so minus 80 dBm is just for illustration that we are in.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, you have cleared my both of these points. The last one is essentially in 5G, you will have the bandwidth which will be variable depending upon the application that you are using, because the research allocation blocks will go.
Exactly.
So noise floor essentially would change. So my only question is this minus 90 or minus 100 dBm noise floor that you assumed in both cases. What is the bandwidth that you considered? I mean,
so if you consider this Wi-Fi scenario, this minus 90 dBm will be around 5 gigahertz, and this small cell scenario is also for sub 6 gigahertz. So
no, the bandwidth. I'm in KTB. What is the
okay. So bandwidth will. So this is basically considering still the LTE advanced. So it's still not more than it won't be more than 200 megahertz or something.
Okay. So same standard as a
2G. Same standard that is gone, but yeah, 5G will have even more.
They will have variable things, whatever they are.
Variable things.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Raj, and a very nice calculations. I enjoyed those calculation businesses.
I've tried to make it as simple as possible, considering the wide range of audiences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A very interesting talk. And this so full duplex essentially would be used where we have something like video applications.
Actually, a lot of things means the future that people are seeing means 5G is now, but 6G is primarily full duplex is one of the technologies that has been considered. Video is one of the things where you can expect more capacity, but full duplex at the same time also gives you low latency because of the same time and frequency utilization. It also low latency.
Right.
So low latency comes again. The IoT applications are very low latency sensitive applications.
Right.
So both the cases it has its applications.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Congratulations once again. Bye.
Thank you.
Sir, I have the two questions from 5G.
Yeah, sure.
Actually, you talked about some ultra precision. So, can you measure that ultra precision? That it is very difficult to measure that ultra precision.
Yeah, so those precisions, basically the ones that I mentioned are technical specifications given by standardization bodies like 3GPP, right? And yes. when you are designing a system, you design those systems to meet those specifications. And 5G, if you want to call your system a 5G system, then you have to meet those specifications. And
Okay.
that meeting those specifications is up to the hardware manufacturer or the software designer who is going to, for our case, we design algorithms, or we design algorithms for in the digital domain. So we'll have to design algorithms, optimization problems in such a way that those technical specifications are met.
Right. So there is one more question. You talked about that 5G is a battery saving technology. But
Yes.
on the other hand, you have talked about some self-interference calculation where you have, in this one example, you have given 150 dB of power for that self-interference cancellation.
Exactly.
So how we can say that it is a battery saving? Because
Yeah, so this is little contradictory, exactly as you pointed out. So if you implement 5G properly, means then it's the battery saving technology. So 5G with all its proposed technologies and hardware can save you, require less energy, and so it's going to save battery. But full duplex is a new technology that is coming up, so it is a 5G and beyond technology. So we have to figure out new methods to new optimizations, new power saving schemes to implement 5G into this releases of to implement full duplex into releases of 5G. So there are research going on how to bring those interference calculations below the certain thresholds so that it can also be a battery saving technology. As a matter of fact, one of the papers that we published in Transition and Communication, we actually show that full duplex is a less energy efficient technology than half duplex. But there are certain ways you can make it more energy efficient. You have to follow those things.
okay. So this self-interference can be nullified with the help of by increasing the spacing between the antennas.
Yes, exactly. You can do that. That is called antenna separation or antenna isolation. But when you have large number of antennas, for example, in 5G, we are talking about sometimes we're talking about massive MIMO, right? When you have large number of antennas, so how long you are going to go? Means you have, if you start separating the antennas, if you have, let's say 512 antennas, so if you keep on increasing the separation between each antenna, so you will need an entire your entire college maybe, or maybe more, right? So it's not very ideal. So you can only separate them to an extent, and the rest has to be done through analog cancelling and digital cancellation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any more question from participant side?
Hello, sir.
Hi, Amit.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, thank you for this wonderful lecture, sir. Sir, I have a simple query. Sir, is it possible to transmit same information or same data using two different Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or same technology?
Can you please rephrase your question? Like, what do you mean by two different Wi-Fi?
Sir, two different Wi-Fi means if we go to a mall, so we are connected to many Wi-Fis at the same time. So best two.
Means I guess you want to say that means at a time.
Yes, sir, at a time.
Even though you are connected to many hotspots, you're not connected to many Wi-Fi networks. You are at a time. You are connected to one network only. Okay, you may be connected to different hotspots, and your mobile is intelligent enough to switch between different networks, to switch between different hotspots to give you the best SINR. So depending on the signal to noise ratio, it is going to keep switching those networks. But at a time, you will be connected to only a single network. Maybe many hotspots, but only a single network.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, any question from participant side?
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, my question is, if we talk for real-time communication system, then how this some power minimization will be affected?
Yes. So again, here it's a good question. So even if it's a real-time communication system, so have you heard about something called the coherence time or the coherence bandwidth?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So what happens in that coherence time or coherence bandwidth is that the channel properties or the channel characteristics are static, right? For example, if you are using a TDD system, you have certain coherence channel, and within that coherent channel, nothing changes. So once you design this transceivers with this rate constraints, once you design this transceivers, basically inside this transceivers, what do you have? The input. The input is all the channel information, channel state information. So once you design this, it is going to be applicable for the entire coherence time until the channel changes. And to answer your question even further, what happens after the coherence time? You have to again rework your algorithm. So that is computationally more demanding. Yes, if you have a centralized algorithm, it is more demanding. If you have a distributed algorithm, so for certain cases, certain nodes will run the algorithm, certain may not need to run the algorithm. And if you want to look even beyond, you have to look at machine learning. You have to look at something like deep learning. You have to look at training the entire network. So you are training it based on data. Once you do that, and how you are going to devise your training data, you're going to devise your training data on this optimization problem that I discussed today. So based on that, you can train your system over many thousand millions of simulations. You can train your data. And if you do that, then in that case, you will see that your deep neural network framework will give you a reasonable enough solution.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Deepan.
Sir, one more question.
Yeah.
Sir, where can we get the real-time data for training this our algorithm?
That is a good question, and that is a question that I will mention. That is the answer will be slightly disappointing. Answer will be slightly disappointing because this data is very hard to find. You have to get it from the cellular networks, and cellular networks usually don't provide it. So when I was in Edinburgh, University of Edinburgh and IIT Indore had a joint project on wireless edge caching for 5G, and we had a BSNL as a partner in it. Even then, we were unable to fetch any form of data from them. Okay, so because this is private data, so until and unless you are working on a very high level government project or something, getting data from them is very difficult. Another way to get this data is from your college. You have your Wi-Fi local area network set up, so you can get the data from there. So the data that you get there won't be that different to what cellular data is. Of course, the headers and all those things will be different, but the properties of the data won't be that different. The requirement, the physical layer properties will almost be the same as I was discussing in the small cell and the Wi-Fi scenario. You can consider similar kind of physical layer parameters. So I think the best case scenario for us academicians is to get the data from our own universities.
Yes, sir. Sure, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, Sudeep sir. You have given a very detailed and a very exhaustive presentation on the next generation IoT. You have started your lecture with some key technology used in IoT. You have included many practical examples for the IoT also. And very interesting thing is that you have also mentioned some real-time data regarding the IoT uses. So, and then your next session will start with some in-depth roadmap of the 5G technology. For this, you have also mentioned some practical examples. And being a faculty from telecommunication, I'm very happy that because IoT normally the field which is considered for the IT people and the computer people, but we can understand
exactly,
including
in the higher layers. In the higher layers,
yeah. For the complete development and deployment for the IoT devices and the IoT networks, the telecommunication engineers play a very important role. So, so we should go, progress our research towards the IoT, that how the this 5G, 6G technology can help to the IoT devices. And you have also given your own practical examples for the power transmission and reception. So it gives the clear scenarios about that. If suppose we are deploying the IoT networks, how this IoT network will work for this network or not. And you have also mentioned some research area, just like antenna cancellation, analog cancellation, and then this self-interference cancellation, etc. So thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your presentation. You have given us the time for this Atal FDP from your busy schedule, and we now know that your lecture was scheduled on Thursday, but as per the request of Professor Bimal Bhatia, sir, you have shifted on Monday. So we are very thankful to you, sir.
No problem, no problem. So yeah, thank you for inviting me, and I have a very close collaboration with Professor Bhatia also. I keep on visiting IIT Indore. Yeah, of course, before the pandemic. After the pandemic, I have never visited. But yeah, if I do visit Indore in the near future, I'll visit your institution as well.
Yes, sir. Please visit our institute also.
Yeah,
it will be very graceful that if you are a visitor or
Sure.
Is Professor Gautam Barua still with your organization, or is
Yes, Professor Barua is still here. So his tenure has officially ended, but means government has now given it on a rolling basis because the government has not appointed anyone new. So he is still there.
What is his age now? 70 years or?
He's not yet 70, I guess. I think close to it, but not yet 70, I guess.
Yeah, he was the one which is known more for establishment of the IIT Guwahati.
Yes.
He did a beautiful work there. And then, of course, I know him from the days he was in IIT Kanpur.
Yes.
Very, very different type of personality. I mean, he is director, but his thinking ways are very different.
He has a different aura.
Different type of sincerity as an academician. He won't allow the MBA companies to come and take the interviews of the student. And many IIT directors didn't like him. IIT Guwahati students also didn't like him because he said, no, if you are in electronics, you must do electronic job. If you are in computer, you must do computer job. If you are in India, you must work for India first and then go abroad.
Yes, he has certain ideologies.
Yeah, but I mean, he's the president of India gold medalist from IIT Bombay. So that
yes.
But he's a different personality, and I am happy that he's still there.
Yes.
Okay,
We are also happy.
Okay.